Just check the lighting there. It's a little bit, as long as you can see me. I've just seen a troubling video from Sydney, in which two young women, teenage girls, sisters, were attacked, by two other girls who hurled abuse at them, racial abuse. These two sisters were of Asian descent, I assume Chinese Australians, well, anyway, of Asian descent. The video didn't specify, but Um, this was on a street in a suburb of Sydney, and they were being taunted and harassed. And one of these, we would say in the UK, yobs, um, actually spat at one of the sisters. It was disgusting. The good news is she has been arrested for harassment and assault. And this wasn't like a sort of she was walking past and said something offensive. This was quite prolonged. If you look at the video, it's quite unsettling. Um, and Then there was the report continued. This was Now This, one of the Now This videos. It showed an extract from Representative Judy Chu, who said that in the United States, in the last 3 weeks alone, 5 weeks alone, excuse me, there have been at least 1,000 racist incidents recorded. This includes a student who was assaulted on a subway in New York City by a woman who may have dislocated her jaw, and she shouted coronavirus taunts. A man in Texas apparently went on a stabbing rampage, saying he wanted to kill Asian Americans. An elderly man in San Francisco was abused, and again, this coronavirus taunt came into it. And in Los Angeles, a 16-year-old boy was taunted by police over coronavirus. Those are just some examples. And we've certainly had incidents in the UK. There was a young Malaysian guy who was attacked with coronavirus taunts. There was a girl in Birmingham attacked by British Asians, incidentally, of South Asian descent. So this isn't always, white people targeting Asians. Um, so it's um, it's a very ugly thing. Um, and there's a few things I want to say here. I still think it's absolutely legitimate to criticize the Chinese government, and there is a lot to say about that. A lot. There's a lot of things. I'm sure I'll make more videos. There's new speculation growing that the virus may actually have come out of a lab. The reason I haven't made a video about that yet is there's a lot of issues around that. Like before, I want to talk about that. I want to look at some of the different angles around that one. Um, Absolutely, there needs to be a reckoning with the Chinese state. I do believe that firmly. I do believe we can't have business as normal with the Chinese government after this. And there has also now been an initiative by the German tabloid guild to sue the Chinese government for loss of tourism and loss of a range of other things in Germany. And there may be a growing sort of tendency towards this. All those things are worth discussing, and I'll likely make videos about them at some point. But for now, I just want to focus on these racist incidents. Um, they're abhorrent. They're absolutely abhorrent. And as someone who still has contact with a lot of my Chinese friends, the idea that this could happen to any of them, some of them are in Western countries at the moment, um, I'm a little concerned, little bit. Not excessively so, because most people don't have this mentality, but there are a small but vocal number of racist idiots, and there's no point glossing this over. It is what it is. If you're taunting someone because of their ethnicity, that's racism by definition. It's repugnant. This is targeting Asian people in general because generally racists are quite ignorant. They don't differentiate between, for example, who's Chinese and who isn't. Not that it matters, it's wrong either way. but any East Asian will do in their mind. Um, no one should have to go through this for simply minding their own business. I do think it's different if you have, let's say you had some Chinese students who were being quite nationalistic, which has happened before, and they were vocally defending the Chinese government, and then some local people took issue with that and got into a heated row with them. That's very different. But people who are minding their own business and then suddenly find themselves being taunted or abused, um, and in many cases, these are not tourists or visitors, which would be wrong anyway, but they are American citizens, they're Australian citizens, they're British citizens. There is no excuse for this sort of thing happening. There really isn't. Um, Now, as to Trump's culpability in terms of him using Chinese virus, I made a video about this, what's in a name, and I said that the term Chinese virus or China virus in itself, I still don't believe is racist, because it is from China. There's no escaping that. However, in light of the fact there has been a growing number of attacks, maybe Trump should change his language if this is encouraging people to behave this way. Um, and he will deny that he has any influence in this sort of behavior. But let's face it, Trump is a nativist president. He has stoked up nationalism. There's no question about it. And I think in light of that, maybe it is time he changes his language on this. I understand why he's saying it is from China, but Chinese virus perhaps has certain connotations that China virus doesn't. Um, and yes, Trump's condemned the racism. He said we need to protect our Asian Americans. Um, but frankly, he said that too late. He should have been saying this weeks ago when the first reports of this was happening. Any other president would have. I mean, after September the 11th, to use an analogy, George W. Bush was very careful to say that there was no place for anti-Muslim discrimination in the US. So it should be the same principle. Um, Whatever the Chinese government does, whatever legitimate criticism there is of it, and there is a lot, it's no excuse for targeting ordinary Chinese people or people of East Asian descent. If they're defending the Chinese government, that's still not a reason for abuse, but okay, there's legitimate scope there for debate or challenging their attitude. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are minding their own business and who are being bullied, harassed, targeted. It's wrong. It must be pretty intimidating, and it must be making a lot of people of East Asian descent nervous and on edge because they might think, well, am I going to be next? Um, and it's just wrong. So I do think that, yeah, it's good that Trump's now said our Asian American, we need to protect our Asian American citizens. But maybe it is time he changes the language. It's not about saying it isn't from China, it's just about recognizing that this is going on and maybe, just maybe, that is having an effect. I must admit, I've slightly changed my view on this. I'd sort of not connected the two. Now I'm sort of thinking, well, maybe there is something in that. Although that wouldn't explain why there's been racist attacks in Australia or the UK. Certainly Boris Johnson hasn't said the Chinese virus, nor has Scott Morrison. So I don't think we can blame Trump on absolutely everything that happens. Um, and if you're one of those people saying, oh, it's the Chinese, it's their terrible cultural practices or whatever, you're trying to justify this, um, just don't. Be a decent human being. Have contempt for the Chinese government. I do. I certainly do. And have a contempt for those sort of cruel, unhygienic practices that we've seen in the wet markets. But the truth is, most Chinese people don't endorse that. That is, it does happen. It's a real problem, but there is a backlash within China. against it. So people need to understand China is a big country and you simply cannot generalize everyone. And that's a general principle. But I'm pleased those girls in Australia, in Sydney, were arrested. I hope that other perpetrators of this are held to account because there's absolutely no excuse for targeting someone due to their ethnicity. If they are defending the Chinese government, that's a different matter. Confront them, challenge them, but don't target people for something that's beyond their control. I mean, that's just, there's no excuse for it. None. And I do think that there needs to be a tough line on this. I mean, as you know, I think of my former girlfriend, she's in Germany now. If something were to happen to her because some ignorant person decided to target her as a Chinese national, I'd be very concerned and I'd be very angry. So, yeah, there's no excuse for it. None.